Darlene George is a manager with Nav Canada. Darlene started her career in air traffic control in 1992, and over the last 28 years she has worked as an air traffic controller, supervisor, instructor, and for the last 9 years as a manager. Darlene's interests include aviation, gardening, hiking, boating, dirt biking, and crafting.
And we're going to talk about leadership, navigating change, and the B word, burnout. Darlene is an exceptional human being, and I can't wait to meet her. So let's go.
Thank you for joining me today. You have been a manager at Nav Canada for 9 years in air traffic control. You were a controller for 18 years before that. And of course, pilots like me, we always refer to people like you. Well, I don't know about anybody else. I used to refer to people like you as the tower gods because you were the voice that came in my head, you know.
I've heard that before.
And previous to that, you came from Transport Canada. So you came from Transport Canada and you've been at Nav Canada for 28 years. Can you tell me what it's like to be a leader in that kind of high stress environment?
It's challenging, and what it's like, it's a leader in a management sense, and I guess when I was a controller as well, I always felt like I was a supervisor for about 14 years. No, maybe not that long, 10 years probably. And in that, when I was a leader as a controller, I always had to be very careful about how I did things because I wanted to set the right example. As I'd watched previous what I would consider leaders or supervisors, managers do things and then ask you to do something different, right? So I think there's a responsibility there, and I've always tried to hold that responsibility as if I say this is the way we should do it, then I should do it the same way.
Right.
Well, phraseology, I always tried really hard to have good phraseology because I thought it was really important. So early on in my career, it's probably a little bit lax as you grow as a controller, but becoming a supervisor, I realized, no, this is important, and I tried to have that. And it's the same as management, just really wanting to set the good example and to show people how I would ask them to behave or to do whatever.
Can you tell me too, I forgot to mention or ask at the very beginning, what towers you manage and sort of what the progression of your career.
My management I started at Victoria Tower, and I managed that tower for about 8.5 years. And then a year into my management, I started managing Victoria Harbour FSS, and I still manage that today. But we moved away from Victoria, and now I have Victoria Harbour FSS, Nanaimo FSS, Campbell River FSS, Port Hardy FSS, and Vancouver Harbour Tower.
So for people who don't know, can you tell me what an FSS is?
It's a flight service station, and it's similar to an air traffic control unit, except in air traffic control, we have positive control. Pilots have to ask permission to do things. And in a flight service environment, it's advisory. So we have flight service stations when the traffic isn't as complex or as high. So it's lower traffic levels.
Right. And so I got to ask what people are dying to ask, and that is, is it that same kind of environment that we see on TV or in the movies where you're sweating and you're like, like the movie Airplane?
Yeah, no. We try for the exact opposite of that, actually. Training is challenging, is difficult, and it's like other occupations where you're learning to do something on the job. People are constantly telling you, no, you didn't do this right, do it this way, no, stop doing that. And you're trying to prove yourself. So it's you can see people who come in with a lot of confidence during their training. It sort of wanes because people are constantly telling them they have to change or they have to improve. That is mostly the most stressful part of the job, is the training. But I've always said, once we train you and you know the job, you know what to do. And for the vast majority of it, if you follow the rules, it's organized, it's not chaotic, people aren't stressed out too much. There are situations, most of the situations that I felt myself in that I was really stressed was when I couldn't help, a pilot was in trouble. There was not much I could do to help. So
Right.
watching a plane crash, or knowing the plane is going to crash or something like that, is very, very stressful, because you're sort of sitting in the tower and you're just watching, right?
Right.
To sort of watch. And I think when we have situations with controllers that are having a hard time, if they've gone through something like that, it actually can recur the next time another incident comes up. So we try really hard to support when people go through that, because it can be quite challenging. But other than that, it's good.
Right.
It's an awesome job. And I would say it's I'm very, very blessed to have been a controller for as long as I was.
And I've spoken to controllers before who said they don't fly. They would never fly. They hate even flying commercially. They just drink the whole time on the plane. But you're not like that.
I'm not really comfortable in small airplanes, I have to say. I don't mind flying commercially. But the smaller the airplane, it would really depend on the pilot.
Right.
I've spent a lot of time in the Lower Mainland, and I was never comfortable if I would going through what we call Glen Valley. It's a practice area.
Right.
And there's a lot of airplanes in there. So yeah, I was never really comfortable going through it.
Right. I found this actually the same thing. In the Lower Mainland, I've had airplanes just cross right in front of me.
Yeah.
For sure, not on the same frequency. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's freaky. So, what would you say is your leadership style?
My leadership style, I like to be collaborative. I'm not a leader that walks into a room and says, this is how we're going to do it. I like to walk into a room and say, these are the rules, or this is the parameters, this is the fence that we have to stay inside. But let's figure out how we're going to do that.
And what do you do with the people who, like, there's always a subset of people who just the rules don't apply to them?
Yeah.
What do you do when you have that person on your team?
Well, in terms of like air traffic control, there are like we have cars and we have our procedures, so they have to apply, like they have to comply to. I've had people on my team that don't particularly like I call them the rules of engagement. When we get together as a team and we're going to do something, we decide beforehand how we're going to behave, or what it looks like when we make a decision, when we come to consensus. And I've had people that don't want to play by those rules. And to be honest, sometimes I just kind of let it go. Depending on where I am personally, I'll be more, if I'm feeling strong. I guess if I'm feeling strong as a leader and confident, I'll probably more have to have a conversation about it and say, you're not really working part of this team. But I find the best way to deal with that is right up front and say, these are the rules of what we're doing. Everyone needs to agree to them now, and then get the group and the peer pressure that comes with the group to really define how we behave with each other.
Right. So it's kind of, this is likely not the correct phrase, but it's sort of self-policing almost.
Yeah.
So, you're self-correcting as a group.
Yeah. Because I'm never going to walk into a room or be in a meeting and correct somebody in front of anybody else. That's just not my style. I would more likely say something after the fact to somebody. But I find most like controllers are strong-willed people where they're very highly intelligent. We would call like, I don't even know if this is really a thing anymore, but maybe it is like a type A personality. We're not afraid to say what we're thinking. So generally in a group like that, people, they do, if somebody says something and it's completely out of line, there's usually somebody to speak up and say, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
If I'm going to do it, I usually use the phrase, I'm going to challenge you there. And I try to do it in a softer manner.
Right.
You know, they're full of something.
That's a good phrase. I think I might adopt that phrase. I'm going to challenge you there.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with the hard stuff, or you need to do an organizational change, and you know it's going to be tricky, how do you how do you prepare your team and get through making that hard change? Sometimes that hard change is changing people because they're not working in your group or whatever. How do you embrace or work your way through the hard stuff?
I find sometimes stuff becomes really hard because you've not had a proper lead up to the change. I would say over my management career, the hardest things are the things that happen with no lead up time. And then all of a sudden you have to walk in and say, this is what we're doing. There's no option. We just have to go through it. So you've had no time to get buy-in. You've had no time to really discuss it and work out the kinks. You're just implementing something. And then the group tends to, sometimes they'll eventually buy in and do it, but they tend to remember and then constantly bring that up to you.
Right.
So if you want, we have a whole group in Nav Canada called Change Management. And if you want to change something, you have to start early and, you know, throw the idea out there. And then people will go, oh, okay, that's change. What's that going to look like? And then you throw it out again, and you give time to people in groups to talk about it, to figure out how it's going to work for them. People want input, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to just be told, they want input. So you have to do that. And if you don't, then you force things through and it just never goes well.
And do you feel like you're a change maker? Do you feel like you're a change maker because of your job or just because you are there? Because I would imagine the gender ratio in your job is skewed in one way.
Yeah, when I started, I was the only female in my class. I was the only female in the first tower I went to. I was the only female in my IFR class. There was a few of them on the floor in the center when I was training. But now I have to say, it's a lot better. Now I was the only female in Victoria Tower for 7 years, probably 7 years. There's one female controller there now, and I've forgotten the original question.
That's okay. Do you feel like you're a change maker? Do you feel like you sort of went into it thinking, oh, I'm a change maker, or you're realizing now I'm a change maker, or it just is the nature of the beast because you happen to be a woman in a sort of male dominated, or previously, I mean, we're seeing a lot of change, but previous to now, the gender ratio was skewed.
It's funny, I don't know that I was a change maker by being the only female, because there was always people before me. I wasn't the first to do anything. I was more like the only one that was doing it, like in my small group. I definitely believe that we're all in the industry we work in aviation. We should always you're trying to make it safer. So that right there says we're always changing something. We're always looking at something, trying to look at it in a different way, trying to make it, in air traffic control, we're always trying to make it more efficient. We're trying to make it safer, more efficient. So yeah, I guess that is my personality. I'm not one to sort of sit back and say, oh, I finished that. Now there's nothing else to do. I'm definitely not that person.
And how do you define the line? Like, when do you know when to say, okay, that's it, something needs to change?
I think honestly, it's usually when there's frustration, when I see my team has frustration, when I see things aren't working. In a safety sense, it's when we see an incident or an accident or a trend in something. And we have to look and say, why is this happening? Runway incursions are really important, but I've sort of spent the last 5-6 years concentrating on runway incursions and the trend of those. So just analyzing stuff and trying to figure out. And you know, it's funny because we worked really hard on the general aviation runway incursions in Victoria, and they decreased dramatically. But then the commercial runway incursions went up. So the number didn't really change, just who it was that was creating the runway incursion change.
That's really interesting. I remember when that happened. I remember the discussion around it.
Yeah.
It was behavior at a particular area in a runway, though, like
Yeah.
one area, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think it was because the reporting got better. I don't know necessarily that I think the situation was always happening, and we started reporting it more.
right, I see.
Yeah.
So when you are, say, organizationally, or even when you're dealing with somebody that you're working with, or that you're going to interview for a job, and you can see that they've gone through a number of changes, do you think sometimes too much change is kind of flaky, or do you think change is inevitable?
Well,
whether in an organization or when you're looking at an individual?
That's a question I ask myself a lot, because I just recently made this change to leave Victoria and do a different job. And for a long time in that job, I felt like I'd kind of I'd backed myself into a corner. Okay, this is now my job now. And I didn't think about changing. And I don't know if that's was ingrained in me young or why I thought that, but I just thought, no, I'm responsible for this job and these people, and this is what I'm going to do. So yeah, I asked myself, I used to ask myself a question all the time. Is it flaky? Is too much change flaky? I think we talked about in a resume. So like, how many jobs is right and how many jobs is not? I just recently read Tim Cole's book. Have you read that?
No. What's the title of it?
Tight Floats and something. I don't remember. You know who I'm talking about, Tim Cole?
Yeah, I'll Google it while you talk.
It's Tight Floats and Fair Winds and Tight Floats or something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, something like that. And in his career, he changed over and over, like to different departments in Transport Canada and different companies when he was flying. And it really gave me a good perspective. And I just thought, he did that. Why can't I do that? Right? I really kind of cemented my decision. I'm going to make this change. Because before that, I just, in my head, I'm like, I'm here and this is what I'm doing.
I think it depends on your personality too.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people just need so much certainty. They cannot, they need that. And some people, they actually require change to be normal. And I'm like that. If I'm not changing my job and changing up something else, I think it's just because people want to be challenged all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you actually said a couple of really key phrases there. The first, or what I took away from that, some of it was you were feeling so responsible.
Mm,
I see a lot with women and with mothers and, you know, people who are just not just women. I mean, people who are managers and who really are have a stake in the success of the organization. You do feel responsible, almost in a parental kind of way.
yeah, absolutely. My very first meeting with my crew in Victoria, I actually said those words. I'm a mother, I take care of people. And like, now that I think about it, I think maybe some of the difficulties I had at the beginning is because I went into a mindset, I'm going to take care of you instead of I'm going to bring out your your how you take care of yourself, I guess. Encourage you to be the one that improves and takes on the leadership and all that stuff. Instead of me taking care of you, I want to support you to become that person. But I didn't go into it initially like that, for sure.
I think too, sometimes you learn and
Yeah.
it's how you are challenged as well.
Mhm.
Because I also had to learn to not be so mothering either and to not take on other people's responsibilities
Yeah.
because they'll let you.
Oh,
So, right?
yeah.
And sometimes I had to say, well, I'm just going to give him some rope. And if he hangs himself, that's his problem.
Yeah.
And try not to care because the problem is that I cared a lot. Right?
Exactly. Well, I had a conversation once with one of my managers higher up, and he actually said to me, well, I was saying, we need this, we need this, we need this, or it's going to fail. And he said, well, what's going to happen if it fails? And I was so mad at the time. How could you let it fail? What do you mean? But what his point was let them build it, like let them grow themselves. You don't have to solve it for them all the time. And I was running around with a chicken with my head cut off, trying to solve it for them all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes too, perhaps we don't let, we don't let people sort of feel or see the consequences of their actions because we just want to make it better.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't learn if they don't feel that the consequence of that.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband and I talk about with our daughter that way. If you have to give them, they have to see the consequences of some of their actions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, I think. So did you ever come to a place where you thought, oh, I'm super burnt out and I can't function? Maybe you can tell me about that. And what was the difference between, oh, I'm burnt out or oh, I'm stressed out or oh, I'm freaked out?
Well, I think I didn't understand burnout till recently. So if I was burnt out over the last 10 years, I would say, 4 or 5 times in that time period, I was done. I didn't want to get up to go to work. I didn't want to have conversations. I didn't want to engage with people. And to be honest, I actually believed it was my own fear of not doing a good job or not doing it right, or I blamed it on myself not being able to be strong enough to do the job. And now I realize, and it's taken me to go through another burnout, the last burnout, where I actually finally said, no, I can't do this anymore. I am going to make a change. To realize, no, I was in a cycle of burnouts. And it wasn't necessarily fear, because I don't know, obviously there's fear in some things, but I don't know necessarily that I fear the uncomfortable. I want to have conversations if it's going to, that person's going to learn from that, or there's going to be a benefit somehow to either themselves, and there's always a benefit when you're the person giving the conversation because for starting it. because you're growing too to be able to do that. But for a long time, I used to, I would stress, I wouldn't sleep, migraines like crazy. And I thought it was my own strength or my own abilities as a leader that were pulling me back. But now, being out of it, being like 6 months, now I'm like in our home that we worked really hard for in a smaller community. I've got new teams, so there's a little bit of excitement around the new teams that I have. But I'm able to look back and say, no, I can have that conversation today without any fear. What's the difference? The difference is I'm not burnt out.
Right. Right.
So I'm going into it with my strength as a leader, with my confidence, with my knowing that it's the right thing to do. And I'm having the conversation without that nagging, I'm going to fail in the background, or fear or anything like that.
I know you do quite a bit of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I find just even having somebody like you around really inspiring, because to me, you have a real calm sense of yourself. You have that calm, quiet confidence. And I think that makes people feel safe around you, and you know sort of what you're going to get, and that can be very inspiring to people, especially when they're around somebody like you for a long period of time. They know they can count on you. Do you feel like you're an inspiration to other women, or just people? And what does that mean to you when people say, oh, you're so inspiring? Or, do you even want to be inspiring? Is that something that you aspire to?
Yeah, I think that I've always wanted to leave a place or a situation or anything better than what I found it. So I would say I aspire to do that. And in doing so, if I'm inspiring people to do the same, then if you have a legacy in life, that would be what I would want my legacy to be. That people see a situation, and instead of walking away saying, "Oh, I don't want to have anything to do with that they jump in and they get a little dirty and they kind of get in there and try to fix it." Yeah, it I don't know. It kind of takes me back a little bit when people say, "Oh, you're a good leader. You're a really good leader," and stuff like that. It really depends on where I am in that burnout cycle.
Right.
It really does. Because if I'm down and out, I'm like, you guys, I'm faking it really well right now. But if I'm not, then I feel like, oh, good. I'm deliberately doing these things, and I'm glad that you see that I'm deliberately doing it. Because I was just talking to a group of people last week, and I was talking about communication and safety culture, and it's really, really important we always keep talking to each other, talking about I can't solve the problem. Like, there are some issues right now with our industry. Me personally, I can't solve them, but I can be here to listen to you, and I can hear your concerns, and we can talk about it, and I can share my frustrations, and I can share my concerns. Again, I said to them, we have to keep communicating. I have now 5 different operations, and I am responsible to keep up the communication with all of them. And sometimes I fail. Sometimes it's a Friday afternoon and I realize I have not talked to one of my, people, my supervisors that work for me. I have not talked to one of them today or this week. And I think, oh, that's not good. Right? But I just tried better next week. Yeah.
Is there anything that, I think that you and I could probably talk for hours about all kinds of stuff, but is there anything that you and I haven't talked about that you feel is really important, that you want to make sure is heard?
I think, the burnout thing is pretty important to me right now. Because I think no matter what job you're in, it doesn't have to be aviation, in everything, as a society, we're like feeling it. We really are. Like I, we're always got new policies and stuff, and they're to make people safe. They're to make sure that people aren't getting sick. And deep down, people know the reason behind it, but it's another change. It's another thing on top of a whole year of what we've been going through, and people are burnt out. And I think we really have to make sure that we are, kind to people and to understand that we're all, like I heard it said, we're not all in the same boat, but we're in the same storm.
Right.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Because everybody's got, my husband and I talked about it. Over this last year, it has been really positive changes for our family. We're closer. My daughter's being homeschooled. We're all in the same house most of the time. We've got, when you have a new dog, we're buying goats in a couple months. Like all of this positive change for us. But if you look in your community, that's not what everyone else, that's not what a lot of people are feeling. So I think we just have to be patient with each other. And
Oh, you were hitting the wall and you were in that burnout cycle. What are the things that you do so that you can make your way through that, come out on the other side? Do you have a practice, or is it something that you just decided, oh geez, I'm burnt out, I have to take care of myself and make a change?
you rely on your tribe. And I have a group of people, and male and female, that help you through things and talk you through it. And if you've got a good tribe, they tell you when you're full of it and when you need to do something better. And then otherwise they pick you up and help you through it. If you don't have that, I don't know how I would get through it if I didn't have people to sort of bring you back up, help you up. Because I need that. I need other people's perspective. We all do. If I didn't, because then you just stew in your own sort of negative thoughts. And when you're burnt out, you don't have a lot of positive thoughts. It's a lot of negativity there. Yeah, that's what I would say. You have to get a good group of people around you. If you're trying to attain a position in leadership, from the very beginning, find your mentors. Find the people that are going to help you learn how to lead and learn how to be in a group. Find the people that you can hear the hard messages from, that you have to do better. And then, and build those groups. And I know now I try to be that person for other people. Like we actually have a thing in our company in our leadership, and part of it is who are the next leaders. And it's our job to be the mentors and the people that help them to bring them along. And, that would be my thing. Yeah, have a good tribe.
That's good advice, because sometimes I think, especially when you feel like you're in it on your own, you isolate.
Yeah.
So people, you're not allowing a lot of people in. And right now we can't allow a lot of people in, but it doesn't mean that their people have disappeared.
Yeah, for sure. I have a girlfriend, and she's definitely like in my tribe. And sometimes she'll say, I can't do it right now. I can't hear you right now. I just need some time to stew in this on my own. And then I'll bring you in.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder too, I think it's maybe different for women than it is for men. I'm not sure, because a lot of my female friends talk to each other a lot, and they will validate each other's feelings, I think.
Yeah.
Where what I've seen, just the men around me tend to isolate more.
Yeah.
You know, they have to sort of go within and think it over and figure things out that way.
Yeah. It's funny if I think back on times where I was burnt out, you know, I probably had lost a member, or things had changed and I wasn't reaching out to the people like I should be. Or I can think of one instance where I had a manager with me helping me through things, and then, you know, jobs changed and he wasn't there anymore, and he was busy doing his own thing, and I found it really hard and had to sort of go, okay, and like when I finally picked myself up, okay, now I need somebody else to fill that void.
Right, right. I tend to go within. So sometimes, you know, people, well, I've had people say, well, you left and I needed you.
Mhm.
I was kind of like, well, you know what? I left because I was super burnt out and I needed you. I had
Yeah,
nobody. I
yeah,
was at the top. I had nobody. When I left, it was me all by myself.
yeah,
I'm sorry I wasn't there to mentor you. Then I'd have to dial myself back like, okay, she needed the mentorship.
yeah.
She needed the hand to hold. She's not at that place where you can just be a lone wolf or whatever. I mean, walk through the hard stuff on your own.
Mm.
You know, she really, okay, Ramona, you just like, you know, where I had to self-correct because I felt like saying, what the fuck are you? You know, like,
I know. I've said it before. Well, the phone rings at my house too.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Darlene, for joining me today. Is there somewhere that people, if they want to know more about you, do you have anything coming up, or should people just refer to the Nav Canada website? Is there a place where they can learn more about your job or you?
Me specifically, I don't know if there's anything really out there, but it's about Nav Canada. NavCanada.ca is our company website, and there's lots of information on there about the jobs we do and the services we provide and that sort of stuff.
Well, thank you again for joining me.